Weddings aren't cheap. Can you guess what has been the most expensive nuptials to date? If you guessed the wedding of the People's Princess to Prince Charles in 1981, then you are correct. The bill for that wedding, a whopping $48 million. However, after inflation, that cost closer to $110 million today. The rest of us have a budget to stick to, which is why we're joined by Kala Williams, owner and event planner for Mod Events Charleston. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So I was getting myself ready when I walked out into the studio and I saw this setup. My breath was taken away. It is so beautiful.
Thanks.
I love the sequin tablecloth and then the flowers. The flowers are just so beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Let's first talk about, let's run down what are all the things we need to consider when planning a wedding.
So when planning a wedding, there's a lot of things that go into it, obviously. It's really important to talk about with whoever's contributing to the wedding, whoever's willing and able. That has changed over the years. It used to be the bride's family paid for everything.
Right.
That's kind of changed now. But I mean, there are a lot of things to consider. One is when you're choosing a venue, if what's included, what's not included. Obviously catering and beverage, all of that stuff kind of goes into it. But photography, videography, florals, decor, just talking through it. I mean, hiring a planner, someone who can help you navigate those waters is really helpful.
Right, and not just the wedding dresses and the tux and the bridesmaids and the grooms.
Invitations go into that. There's a lot of other little things. So it's good to have somebody on your side to help you kind of figure out what all is going to be expected.
Right, so those are sort of the common components of a wedding.
Absolutely.
Where do you think people should put more of their money towards?
So people love, the entertainment is really important, you know, whether it be a band or a DJ. It just depends on your budget too. Obviously catering and bar are a big chunk of that. In my opinion, photography is one of the most important things because in 20 years, that's what you're still going to have. So you want to have those pictures, and that's something I wouldn't skimp on.
Absolutely, that's right, because if you have a lousy picture of your most important day, then
it's kind of sad.
It's very sad indeed. So when you're choosing a band, I've heard certain tips where you could contact the local college and get a group of studying musicians to come and play.
Especially for, like, you know, your ceremony music for strings. But there are a lot of great local companies who you could do just you know, a duo or something smaller too, if you're on a budget, to still have something awesome.
And when you're picking a photographer, what should you look for? Because everyone has their own style.
Absolutely.
You see the photographer, though, that he goes in the middle of the field and he does somersaults and then he snaps a picture. I mean, it's just kind of wild. I don't know if it's real or not. But
well, there's so many great Charleston photographers. It's important to think when it comes to your budget, how many hours you need. Talk through that with your planner or whoever's kind of figuring out your timeline, how many hours you need, and then what's included, if your digital rights are included and those things. But it's good to just have somebody to kind of help you figure that out.
And videographer, too.
Absolutely. How many hours from do you care about when you're getting ready all the way to your send-off if you're doing sparklers or whatever.
Right.
So how many hours do you really need?
And then as far as food goes, food is very important in my world. And I've gone to weddings where I think they put most of their money towards renting out a venue, and then the food is just the side note. It's an afterthought.
Right.
And you end up getting the rubber chicken and the typical sides, and just, you know, it's not very special. So,
which is why it's good to request a tasting and to try that food first, but also to try different places. A lot of venues you have to use what they include. And if that's the case, then you're you just have to pick the best thing they have.
Right.
But if you have your choice, do tastings, do more than one. And that way you know exactly what you're getting.
Do you have to typically pay for those tastings?
So a lot of them you do have to pay, but a couple $100 is totally worth it to make sure that guests aren't leaving and saying they had rubber chicken.
Right.
So
Yeah, that is true. And how about cakes? Cakes are the centerpiece of the wedding reception.
They are, and they can be expensive, but it's just a matter of what you care about. I mean, if you want something beautiful, then you're going to spend a little more money on it. But, I mean, you could always do smaller desserts and then a beautiful smaller cake. So it just depends on your budget. If you are on a tight budget, then maybe doing the smaller cake.
Yeah, I think we've all seen Father of the Bride. It's not just flour and water, people. It really isn't. There's so much more that goes into it. All right, we need to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to have more tips with Kala, so don't go anywhere. We're back with Kala Williams, owner and event planner for Mod Events Charleston, and we've been talking about planning weddings on a budget. Does it make it hard, I guess, making a living at this and then trying to work on a budget, does this make it harder for you?
Well, I got married last year, and it was definitely hard to.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was hard to plan on a budget, but you know, it's the biggest thing is figuring out what matters to you. You know, what's important? Would you rather have the big band, and is the food the most important thing? For me, I cared about the, you know, pretty tablecloths or the decor. It's really just figuring out what matters to the couple.
Right, okay. Let's talk about the centerpiece. It's so beautiful.
Thanks.
So this particular tablecloth, is something like this expensive?
It is.
Yeah, it looks like it.
They're a little pricey. What I usually suggest, if you don't really have the budget for a lot of expensive linens, is to do, you know, more normal linens on all of your regular tables, and then do something fun on your cake table, on just your guest book table, the things where people will see it the most.
That's true. That's true. And this beautiful floral centerpiece.
Thanks.
This is a lovely centerpiece right here. These flowers, though, these also look a little expensive.
So not necessarily. So I actually made this morning really quickly, but
really?
It's, yeah.
Wow.
But the thing I brought this for is when you're talking about a budget, doing something smaller and then including candles is a good way to cut down on some of that floral cost. I mean, I love tall arrangements. I think they're gorgeous, but maybe just having a few of those and mixing in some candle arrangements with just some small florals will help save some of that money.
And these are so beautiful. So you've got some roses. Are these?
These are ranunculus, and then a little bit of eucalyptus.
And the eucalyptus, so pretty. It's beautiful.
Thanks.
So you say candles sort of fill out the space.
Absolutely. Candles go a long way, and they're really affordable.
Okay, that's good to know. And then with evaluating a venue, so how do you go about picking the right venue for your budget?
So when it comes to venue, that can make or break your actual budget. So going in, finding out what's included, what's not included, if you have to use their catering and bar, it's important to just go in and get a proposal or see a sample proposal, because those things can really add up over time. So I would say go ahead and find out, you know, what those little added costs, the extra, like what the chef attendants, the cake cutting fees, things like that. Just see what it's going to be in the long run.
What's a cake cutting fee?
Well, some places they charge you a fee to cut your cake. So it's just good to see what those are going to add up to be. So
it's okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you want to see it all together before you commit to a venue, because just because the venue is cheaper doesn't necessarily mean your overall price is going to be less.
I see. Okay. And then I hear that some places are cheaper on certain days of the week. So is that a myth or is that true?
Well, it is, and especially in Charleston, we are such a destination place that people get married here on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and it is a little less expensive to get married on a weekday or on a Friday or a Sunday. And you know, the people who really care about you, who want to be there, they're going to be there no matter what day you get married.
True.
So if you can save that $1,500 and put it towards transportation, then great, or you know, whatever.
Do you have any opinions on selecting a wedding dress? Because of course for the bride, that is the most important thing, is what they look like when they walk down that aisle.
Well, the key is to plan your budget for your dress. And don't go in and try on a $10,000 dress if you're looking for a $1,500 dress.
Don't want to fall in love.
No. And I always tell people too, when it comes to a wedding dress, you wedding shop like you man shop. Like once you find the one, you don't keep looking. You're not allowed. So once you find the dress, don't keep looking, because then people end up with 2 or 3.
And do you think that it's a little overrated having the bigger, more expensive dress?
Well, my thing is, it's your special day. Yeah. You get it once. You should wear what makes you feel comfortable, and what you really care about is not necessarily maybe the label versus how it makes you feel.
Right, okay. So. Well, that's really good advice. And what kind of dress did you wear for your wedding?
Actually, mine was not that expensive, but I tried it on, and the minute I put it on, I was like, oh, okay, this is the one.
Yeah. So. Well, and I know that when your groom was waiting at the end of the aisle, he knew that that was the one. She was the one. All right, Kayla, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We'll have all the tips on our website, foxcharleston.com.